Hey everybody, we're going to start this episode with a little shout out to our good friend Terry at DLAB, and I'll explain why to you. We're doing that in a moment. Welcome to episode 1 of the Killer Joe guitar/bass amplifier. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 1 of our Killer Joe amplifier. This is going to be our bass amp that I discussed in my previous video. And we're going to start off just by reviewing the cabinet for a few seconds here. Some of you expressed concern, can this box handle the weight? This box is made out of solid plywood. It's very solid. No problem handling the weight at all. And we'll look at the handle as well. First thing we're going to do in this thing, before we do anything, is we're going to have to drill the holes in the front here for the controls. And the reason why, which I'll show you in a moment, with the chassis in here, is really going to be very difficult to line up these holes with the chassis. So what I'm going to do is mount the chassis inside, make sure it's secure, and then I'll just drill some holes where I'm going to put the pots for this amp, and then I'll just punch, put a little center punch there on the chassis, and then I'll know where to drill the holes. This we know is going to be for the input jack, so the input jacks will be right in the center. This will be flush up against here, and that's going to be the very first thing we do. Once we do that, and I drill the holes for the controls here, then I can take out the chassis and start laying out the components. So let me walk you around this cabin a little bit and show you what it looks like. Again, very heavy, with nothing in it. It says Bell & Howell on there. And you'll see it has an old leather handle, but it's secured with metal, so the handle's going to be just fine, and it actually looks cool. And I noticed here on the front they have rubber feet, like so. So I assume that meant that you could lay the cabinet face down if you wanted to store it, or maybe it sounded better that way, I don't know. We'll figure that out. Let's flip it around. Oh, one other thing, the screen here. There is a screen, and it looks like there was some sort of covering on it. I'm going to replace this screen and make it a little nicer. I just don't like the way this looks, and I'll maybe put a new emblem in here. Maybe it'll say Killer Joe. We'll see. Let's flip it around. And if you look at the back, you'll see the back is also vented. It also has screen. And again, they must have had some kind of flocking on here. That's what it looks like the stuff they used to use on turntables. So we open up the latches, and we look inside. And here we have it. So there's little clips here. I'm not sure what they were for. And there was a little pin sticking out here which mated with the original speaker. So it kept it nice and solid. So we'll have to see if we can use that for something. But here's our chassis. As you can see, fits in there perfectly, like so. And our objective here is going to be to drill the holes. Okay? So first thing we're going to have to do, I think, is figure out a way to mount this chassis and keep it solid. That shouldn't be too hard. What I'll probably end up doing is using a piece of like 1x1 and mounting it right here along the bottom with some screws, so that if you ever had to take it out to service it, you could do that. Or I can run screws underneath. I'll show you underneath the chassis. Thing fits in there really good. I can run screws underneath and just grab it over here on the edges. So I have to decide what I'm going to do there. And again, it's a chassis I'm using is a Bud AC411, and we're going to have to figure that out. I also, just taking a look at the bottom here, I have some kind of bolt here. I'm going to have to see what that is. I'm a little concerned about heat because this is like a felt material right here. So I'm probably going to remove this felt material, just so in case it gets hot underneath that thing, we don't start a fire, right? Got to be careful of that. And I'll probably put some some foil tape under there, just to protect it, to stop the wood from drying out. So that's going to be how we handle that. So our first step here is to start drilling these holes for the controls. You got to remember, I need a pilot light, because I am going to put a pilot light in the front. I need a volume/on-off switch, which I have. I need a tone. I need a bass. and treble, I'm sorry, not tone, treble and bass, and my input jack right there. On the back of the amp, we're going to put another potentiometer for vibrato. Actually, we'll probably throw that up in the front. Vibrato, and then we're going to have a pot in the back for feedback, adjusting the feedback. And that's how you modify the tone of the amp. So that'll be coming in the back here. I'm not going to put that in the front. So it looks like in the front we're going to be drilling for four controls, and the input jack, and the pilot light. That's 6 holes in the front. One I don't have to drill because it's right there. All the power is going to be on this side of the cabinet. Alright, this is going to be the transformer, all that stuff, because I'm going to keep it away from the input side. So it just makes sense that the pilot light would go somewhere here, and our on-off volume would go somewhere in this area, in this power section. Right? I do plan on keeping the power section right about here, and leaving all of this real estate here for signal. Gives me plenty of room. Biggest thing I need to mount underneath, obviously, is the choke. No problem. This chassis is 3 inches tall. There's plenty of room to mount that choke in there. So let me get cracking on this, and I'll come back and show you after the holes are drilled. Okay, so I've started laying out where the controls are going to go in this thing, and let's just kind of walk through the logic behind it. So I know that my chassis is 3 inches. So I figured out where the floor is here, right? There's a piece of, I think 3/4 inch plywood under here. So it actually is right below this ring. So I measured up 3 inches from here to here. So here's my chassis. Now remember, we're going to put signal on this side, power on this side. So starting right here, it's going to be our dial lamp. Right here is going to be our volume and our on-off switch combined. Down here is going to be the intensity, treble, bass, and the input will be in here. Okay, so we have that all mapped out. It's spaced evenly. I've got 2 inches between these, so that's good. I also have it leveled, so I know exactly they're all going to be on center. And then we took a look at our chassis. And let's pull this up a little bit so you can see it. Sorry, battery died. So I didn't want to have another pilot lamp here because I wanted it on this side, and I didn't want to have to run filament lines all the way around or down and up and over. That's just way too long. So what I'm going to use here is I'm going to use a 120 volt indicator light. That's going to come out the front, and it'll be tied into this electric circuit right here. And that will provide me the indicator light on the front of the unit, right? Just to drill a little bit further into what this thing may look like, if we're looking at the front, if you recall in the cabinet there's a hole right here, and this is going to be the input jack, like that. Okay? Back here is going to be a speaker jack. Now look where this is, right next to the output transformer, right? We're in good shape there. So over here we have our volume and pot. We're going to put our treble, bass, intensity. And you'll notice everything is very close to these 12AX7 tubes because most of the wires for these are going to run to these tubes. So this is a very clean amp build. Okay? And I should have some space right here for my choke, which has to go somewhere in the power section. And you'll notice on the flip side of the cabinet, this circle is where my electrolytic cap is going to mount. So I'll have a hole there. So I'll have everything in close proximity. And theoretically, I could take a piece of aluminum and put a little divider right here, if I wanted to, and really isolate the power section from the rest of the rest of the amplifier. Now, I know this is very simplistic and I'm oversimplifying it, but it's important that I know what I'm doing here before I start cutting anything. Okay? So now that I've established how I'm going to do this, let me start showing you some of the work that we've laid out and how we're going to do it. Okay, so the next step here is to drill the holes in the front of this thing to figure out where they're going to be so when I mount it, they come through. So what I did was I figured out where the floor is by sticking my finger in this hole, and I know where the bottom is. And I've measured it, and it's where this piece of blue tape goes. And then I measured up 3 inches, which is right here, because this is a 3-inch chassis, right? So I now know that I have this theoretical space to mount things. I then calculated the center of the space, 1.5 inches, and drew a line across, and that's going to be the line that I use to mount the controls. So, just like so, right? You can't see that, but that's what I've done. And And what I've done here is I've laid out right here what we're going to do. This is going to be the indicator lamp that I told you about, 120 volts. This is going to be the power on, off, and volume switch. This is going to be the intensity switch. There's a little metal plate here, which I'm going to leave. I'm just going to put this a little bit down. It's still within the parameter of the 3 inches. This will be the intensity switch pot, which doesn't get used very often. Bass, treble, input. So really all I'm going to do now is just drill holes, in, like so, down in there. Once I do that, I can put the chassis inside the box and mark where I need to drill the holes for those potentiometers. So this is done. That's good. So now I want to talk about the chassis layout. So let me get this off the bench and we'll talk about that. Okay, here's our chassis. And you'll see I already have one of these holes cut out because I wanted to test that knockout punch kit because I've never used one before, and I'm actually going to show you how to do one because I didn't find a lot of good videos on YouTube on how to do that. But just to kind of lay out the land here, this is my power transformer. So I've got the 4 holes marked with the screws, and then I'm going to cut out these circles. And I'll just use a step bit for these with a grommet to run the wires through. Same thing here on the output transformer. 4 holes, 2 holes to run the wires. Here's our 6550. Here's our 12AX7s. And of course, here's our capacitor. On the front, which is this side, we're going to have all of our pots that I mentioned. Volume, tone, intensity, bass, the whole 9 yards. Indicator light, input jack right here. So what we're going to do tonight, just to show you, is we're going to cut out this hole for the 6550 tube. Okay. So the way we do that is we're going to use this this Greenlee kit that I showed you, like so. And this socket right here, which I believe is 3/4 inch, like so. This is the exact hole that the hole will be, exact size. All right, and what you do with this thing is you chase it, you drill a tiny pilot hole, and you run this bolt through it, and you just tighten it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to shut the camera off for a moment. I'm going to go drill this out, big enough for this bolt to fit through, like so, and then we'll show you how it works. So let me go do that, and I'll be back. Okay, you can see we've drilled our hole. This bolt will comfortably fit through, like so. So what you have to do with this thing, it's very simple, is you take this die out, like so, right? And the die is actually going to fit in like this. So you take this, you put that there, just like so, you turn it over, and you screw on this with the teeth facing down. As tight as you can get it. Okay? And all you do is you take a wrench and you start tightening. So let's get our wrench. And that's a 1-inch bolt on top. So we're just going to start turning. And what's going to happen is you're going to hear 2 very distinct pops. There's going to be 2 pieces when this thing is done that come out inside the die, and I'll show you. Let's just keep turning this until we hear a pop. Should be coming soon. Any minute now. There's one. And we got both of them. So theoretically, this pulls right out. See that? And there's our hole. Now, and I'll show you what's left in here when you unscrew this bolt. Really, really simple to do it this way. It's so neat, it's clean. You don't have to worry about bending the chassis, which is what you do when you try to do it with a drill and a step bit. It typically will end up being a nightmare. Let's get this bolt out of here. There we go. And when you take this die out, here's what you're left with. Two little pieces of metal, just like so. Now this was a particularly small hole, so there's not a lot of metal. That's exactly what it did. Okay? So this worked really well. Let's get our socket, our 8-pin tube socket, and we'll put that in. Let's see what that looks like. That's mounted from the top. Now theoretically this hole could be a little bit bigger. I may have to use a bottom mount socket on this thing. Well, actually I don't. I can mount this from the bottom. So it'll look just like that. If you flip it over, we're going to take our socket. It'll fit right in there like that. And all we have to do is just put some screws in there, and that's good to go. Okay? And we have a nice clean socket hole. Isn't that cool? And we are going to use ceramic socket for this thing. So the plan is going to be to do the same thing with the 12AX7s. Those are even smaller. And with this particular kit, for those small holes, there's an even smaller bolt that you have to use. Here's the size, right here. And the bolt is much smaller. And this is the size that you get right here. And that should be just enough to deliver the size that we need for those sockets. So I'm not going to do those smaller ones on camera because you've seen one already. You know what it looks like. So my plan for this project going forward, which will be done before the next episode, is to drill all the holes in here I have to drill. I have to drill holes here, and all these things need holes here to mount the socket, all kinds of good stuff. And we're going to get everything drilled out and ready to go. And then this chassis will be ready to start building in. First thing we're going to do is we're going to build our power side right here. We're going to get that all working. We're going to install our bridge rectifiers and our caps, and we're going to test it, make sure that we're getting our high voltage out, make sure that the filaments light up, all that good stuff. That'll be our first test. Of course, there'll be no load on it, so our B+ is going to be way up there, but that's okay. And then we'll start to install the components. Okay? And that will include the power cord, the fuse, the speaker jack, the volume pots, the lights, the whole 9 yards. So that's where we are. We're going to take our time and go slow. And I did use a Sharpie on this so I can just get rid of it with some rubbing alcohol. So if I take my rubbing alcohol here, a couple of pumps, and just go around this hole, you'll see that it comes out really nice, like that. The thing I like about the knockout punch, like I said, is you don't dent the chassis. I've done these with the step bit. We actually have to push down so hard to get it to bite. Sometimes it actually indents the metal. I don't like that. So we're going to be in good shape here with this thing. Okay. So I'm gonna end this episode here because I've got some work to do on the chassis. When we come back, we're going to mount all the power stuff like I told you. All right. If you have any questions, let me know. Again, I want to thank Terry from DLAB. Go check out his channel. It's really cool. He does some really awesome stuff. He's also into ham radios and things like that. And he has a lot of cool ham radios like Vikings and stuff. So if you're into ham radios, go check out Terry's channel. And he also does some really cool testing, with things that you may be interested in. And of course, I want to thank Brendan. Brendan and I continue to work together on this, on the design, and we'll continue plugging along. So until then, we'll see you. This is Ron.